Okay, we're back here today. Let's look at something that comes up quite a bit on the ACT, a parallelogram. Let's see what we got here. It's a parallelogram. They tell us one side's 20, the other's 10. They give us an angle is 150. Quite straightforward, just want the area. So let's just get right into it. First things first, let's just make sure we're all clear on the properties of a parallelogram. I'm pretty sure we all know this, but just let's humor me here. So if this is 10, right, this side is 10. And if this is 20, that's 20. And just remember, parallelogram, so not only do the consecutive interior angles, they must add to 180, right? So you know this one has got to be 30, but the opposite ones are the same. So this is 150, and this is 30. So we have all that. Now we got to figure out, do we know a formula? You know, can we chop this thing up into a rectangle and two triangles? You can do all of those things. I'm just going to show you a couple different methods here. You know, pick and choose what you think is easiest. The easiest by far is there's a formula which you may learn in pre-calculus, you may not. And it's just this. And this holds true for a parallelogram or a rhombus. It's just AB sine C. And all that means is you take two sides, the two different sides, and you take the sine of the angle in between. Very easy. If you can remember that. Now people will say, well, how do I know if I use the 10 and the 20, do I use the 150 or do I use the 30? And I say it doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is because we should know this property, which in English just means if two angles add up to 180, their sines are exactly the same, right? So obviously 150 and 30 add to 180. Therefore, the sine of 30 and the sine of 150 are exactly the same. So this would be my first choice. You know, it's not that hard to remember that. This makes it very easy. This will just give us AB, whatever side you want, 10 times 20 times the sine. I'll just use 150. So 10 times 20 is what, 200? The sine of 150, if you don't know that off the top of your head, just use your graphing calculator, or any calculator really. You'll just see that's a half. So there's one way to get 100. The second, and probably the most common way, is you're just going to have to know area is just base times height, right? So just remember, base is what you think it is, like the baseline in tennis, or just the bottom piece. But the height always has to be straight up and down, always straight up and down. It's not 10. The mistake, you know, people are going to get caught doing 20 times 10. That's not right. So the height would just be this straight. Right, and the height always, and altitude always has to form a 90-degree angle. So that's 90. If that's 30, you know that that one's 60. And we're after this, right, this would be the height here. This would be the height. So, you know, I say this a lot, you really should know the 30, 60, 90 triangle. Again, this stuff is not that difficult to remember. They just like to test it. They just like to test it. So let's see what we have. Right, here's the 30, here's the 60, here's the template. Opposite the 30, we'll just call that x. Opposite the 90 is always going to be double that. Right, so the side opposite the 30 is going to be half the side opposite the 90. And then the 60 is just the small side with a radical 3 on it. So let's look here. Opposite the 90 is 10, which would then make opposite the 30 half of that, which is 5. So if we know that now, we go back to our formula. The base is 20, right? The whole thing's 20, the height's 5. There's 100. Again, and certainly if you don't know the 30, 60, 90 triangle and you're comfortable with trigonometry, you know, you have a couple options here. You can use SOHCAHTOA. That's fine, right? You could say something like the sine of 30 is equal to the opposite side, which we don't know, over the hypotenuse, which is 10. You know, you could even use the law of sines. That's fine too. Right? You could say the sine of 90 over 10 is equal to the sine of 30 over x. Whatever floats your boat, you know, any of those things will get the job done. You know, the last thing I think you're going to be hurting here if you don't know the formula and you got to chop this into a rectangle in two triangles. I don't love that play. You can get away with it when it's pretty straightforward. This one is no good. That's not going to be very good. So either it's this, and just make sure you know either this one or this one. You guys should be good to go.